Hey, what is up, Omni athletes? If you have not registered yet for the 2019 Future of Sport Conference, do it today. Go to live.theomniathlete.com. This conference is truly going to transform the way you look at sport, the way you compete in sport, and if you are a coach or a leader who's working to bring sports consciousness into your team, into your organization, into your client base, whoever it is that you serve, and you need help building that bridge in translating the practices of higher consciousness, the practices of meditation, mindfulness, EFT, training principles around energetics and embodiment, and how that all translates into athletic performance and in a way that you can communicate its value, and by extension, the value you deliver in being able to bring that work to sport and to the world. This is the conference for you to be at. We are going to have an incredible list of speakers and teachers that all have gone through the journey of translating that work, that value, that power into athletic performance and into peak performance for sport, for life, through movement. So be there July 19th through 21st in San Francisco. The Future of Sport Conference. Go to live.theomniathlete.com to register today. Grab your ticket. We'll see you guys in San Francisco. Welcome to another episode of Omni Athlete. We created this show and company to empower your performance with the wisdom and techniques of the world's highest achieving body, mind, and spirit competitors. Okay, so today's guest is an experienced leader, executive coach, developmental consultant, and Shodan black belt in Aikido, who motivates his clients to move deeper into their leadership roles and to effect sustainable change in themselves and their organization through the practice of skillful interaction. It's my pleasure to introduce to Omni athlete, RJ Jennings. Welcome to the show, RJ.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to meet that guy that you're introducing. Thank you.
He sounds pretty cool.
I like him.
So, one of the places that I would love to start, RJ, is actually something that we teed up in that intro, which is skillful interaction. What does that phrase and, in a bigger picture view, practice really mean?
Right. So let me give you a little history of where that came from, skillful interaction. I went through coaching school, and then I found Aikido via coaching school to find someplace where I would be coached. And then I found a program that really resonated for me. It was called Leadership Embodiment. And it was started by Wendy Palmer. And there's the foundation of it is that we develop a declaration or an intentional statement. And that intentional statement is what's possible for us to create in the future. And as I got connected to this, I realized that my history, the reason that I am where I am, is because of a declaration. When I was 7 or 8, a cousin of mine came to visit, and he was in college, and he pushed me to begin to visualize what could happen. This was in the south side of Chicago. So the fact that I'm alive, let alone sitting in Northern California and in executive coaching, is amazing. But I realized I started this declaration back then. I started to visualize what it would be like to be one of those guys that flies on a plane, that has a job with a suit and tie. And I think you and I had talked about this a while back. It was hard for me to visualize that because I didn't see myself on TV. I couldn't relate to what I was watching on TV as a possibility for myself. And he really encouraged me to do that. So long story to this skillful interaction is that I realized that my declaration in my life is that I'm committed to the integration and the global embodiment of diversity for the sake of skillful interaction throughout the world. And what that means to me is that we all seem to have the same needs and love for family and relations and taking care of each other, yet we have this inability to communicate. And my thought is that it won't happen in my lifetime, but the more that we reach out and connect and have these conversations, I think the more of the chance of us being able to communicate and be skillful in how we communicate. So it's really opened up a whole new world for me in terms of how I bring it to the world and how I invite others into it.
So in your work, what have you seen and maybe that's not even the question. The question that really popped up for me was,
When we don't have role models, when we don't have the ability to really see, especially from a young age, and this applies to athletes, but I think it's universal, and especially for coaches in general, because we're building those relationships is critical. It's foundational to performance. When we don't have role models coming up that really give us that external visual reinforcement of where we want to go and who we want to become, how can that impede the ability to really show up authentically in communication?
Right. I think that's a conversation we could probably spend weeks on, because it touches an emotion that often we don't even know exists. And because of this journey of moving into more mindfulness, more connectedness, I've become a little more in touch with it. So, what brought us together, and I'll speak a little out of school here, was that what brought us together was I was receiving your emails, and I took a look at your coaching staff, and I thought, what a beautiful thought that you're bringing this idea and expanding our perception around athletics. And yet when I looked at the list of coaches, I didn't see myself in the coach, and I felt lonely. So I felt like, wow, and so normally I let it go. And you're really good at continually sending new updates and invitations to your event. And eventually I couldn't resist. I had to send you an email and just say, I think I'm the wrong person for this. I don't quite see this. And I think the world that you work in is, if there's ever a place where there's diversity, where there's I don't even know want to call it diversity. It's a cross-cultural experience. It's in athletics, right? And so we see that we can play ball, but we don't see that we can coach. We don't see that we can own a team. We don't see that. And so I don't know if there's one answer for the question that you have, but what it does, I think, is it puts a lens on it that continues to help put us in a box. And it's maybe it's my own doing that I put myself in the box, right? Like I can motivate myself up and beyond, but imagine if in fact that didn't exist, that wasn't the barrier, and I could see myself being the newscaster. Okay, I can't make the team, but I can do the interviews, right? And so I think that it affects our children in a wide variety of ways. And so as parents, I think what we do is we want to continue to try to help them overcome those hurdles, right? And as members of the society and citizens, we want to continue to open up the channels, right? Like my invitation to you is, it's not about numbers, but it's about what's the invitation to an executive coaching staff or coaching staff that you have there that looks a lot more like the community, right? Like, are you reflecting the community, right? So I have a million things to say on that, but that's a snapshot. A little bit.
Well, I think it's a beautiful place to jump further into this conversation from, because one of the beautiful things about sport, right, is that it levels the playing field in a way, in theory, that we may not see or experience in other areas of our culture, right? So in theory, in an ideal world, you step onto the field, onto the court, onto the track, into the pool, everybody's equal, right? It's just how do you perform in that given moment as a team or as an individual? And so we, both as an organization and also as a community, want to represent that same ideal. And I think the question that comes up for me, and I'm really excited to dive into this, is why is it in sport that even though that should be the foundational level, still it seems like we fight to have level playing fields. We fight to really let performance itself represent what it needs to in the moment.
Mm-hmm. And my disclaimer in our conversation is to make sure that I understand that I'm offering a perspective, right? My perspective and not a representation. And my answer today is very different than my answer next week this time, right? So, but one, I think that it's a natural progression of what happens. And what I mean by that is when I looked at your offering, my vision, and I don't know if this is true or not, is that there was someone that you gravitated to, that you connected with and said, hey, let's do this, right? Now, more than likely, that person looks like you. because he comes from an environment similar to you, and there's a natural camaraderie and connection. And I think that's a very natural process, right? So then what happens is, then the next person comes in and they begin to look, right? It's not intentional, and yet it happens at a base level. So it's so deep seated in us that we're not really attuned to it. So I'm not saying to you that you're doing the wrong thing. What I'm saying to you is, all right, well, how do we open up the channels so that you build camaraderie with somebody who's completely opposite of you? What's the possibility of someone from Asia sitting on your team with a different language that brings in a different thought? Like, what opens up from there, right? So my thought is that we're born into a family. We're born into a community. We go to a church or spirituality or religion, right? And those units are all built around creating safety for us in life, right? As children, that's what we look for, right? How do we belong, right? Like, where are we in this? And that community really begins to look like yourself, right? And so it's just natural, that's where we are, right? So the challenge, the piece that's so unnatural is, how do I step beyond that, right? How do I include others? I was listening to NPR, and I don't know what company this person was from, but there was an individual who had a company, and basically they were studying him because he had such an integrated staff. And he said, I started the company with the statement of, and he talked about opening up to multicultural environments, and that's what would be in the door. If we make that statement, right? I'm not saying force it. I'm not saying the numbers. I'm saying if that becomes a part of our sinews, then it's amazing what actually begins to enter. It's not going to be easy. Once it happens, it's going to be some collisions, and we need to be willing to handle all of that, and accept it. And let's look at what the potential growth of it is. So sometimes I think I forget your question. I might get lost in this swirl. But
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And they're really, the energizing part of these conversations, what really lights me up is not so much the answer to the question, it's the thread that gets pulled in the process of answering the question, right? Whatever the answer may be. So when you speak,
that's beautiful.
Thanks, RJ. When you speak, what I hear and feel is a genuine level of authenticity and truth, right? A deep connection to what that truth is for you. And I wonder, what's been the role for you of martial arts in coming to that level of embodied truth? And the reason I'll ask this question is both to dovetail on our conversation about diversity, and also to say, as leaders developing athletes in the world of sport and human beings, we want them to embody their truth the same way you and I are talking right here. So how do we do that? And what are skills that you've learned?
Right. It's okay. I'm sorry. Can you say that question again?
There's a lot of layers. First place we'll start is what's the role and what has been the role of martial arts in you really learning to embody this truth that you have and your ability to communicate?
Right. Beautiful. I just talked to my sensei yesterday on a Zoom call, in fact, and she visited my son, which was like this moment for me where she actually got a chance to hold my son and welcome him into the world. And it's a moment that I'll remember forever. It's because the lessons I learned from martial arts has been invaluable. So one is the martial art that I participate in is Aikido, which I call a spiritual martial art. It's the belief is that the attacker is hurting inside and needs our help. And what was called upon us is this idea of being inclusive and connected and finding a safe place to have the conversation, right? Like, they need help. And it has changed my world dramatically. We were talking yesterday about where do I use this leadership embodiment work that I bring. And my question really, I turned the question around and said, where don't I use it? Because what the martial art has taught me is, one is to stand firm in your belief, but to be open and inclusive, right? To be an invitation. Southside Chicago taught me how to stand in the fight position, right? You and I would not have this conversation because you would not want to approach me if I were in my old self, right? So it really has reshaped, one, how I stand, how I invite. A quick story, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little bit about the martial art. My wife and I are looking at relocating, and I went down to the town where we're going to eventually move to. And I was driving along. I was going to the driving range, hit some balls, and there was a little snafu traffic heading there. And so this guy behind me apparently got upset, and he drove and followed me until I parked, and he hopped out of his car. Now, my normal self, my Chicago self, I would have been at his door before he got out. And it would not have been pretty, whatever we wound up doing, right? My martial arts self was to take a breath, to stand tall, and I walked around to the back of the car. He came up upset saying, you almost sideswiped me, and he was yelling. And I said, well, thank you very much. You have a great day. And he was sort of upset because I wasn't taking it that seriously. And he turned and he said, well, wait a minute. And I said, let me tell you something. His name was Dwayne, or I think it was Dwayne. He wanted to shake hands. I wouldn't shake hands at that point. I said, you know something? I'm not going to take care of your feelings, but I want you to know that there's bigger things in this world that we can deal with. Like, this is a privileged move for you to be able to follow me like this. If I followed you, I'd probably be in jail. Now, that's something I can deal with. That's something we can address. I used Aikido as a way to change the center of what he was attacking. The conversation shifted. He was a little lost in it, right? So without it being a physical confrontation, it became this dance. And at one point he said, okay. And he says, okay, thank you. And he started walking away. I said, no, Dwayne, you can't leave. I said, your privilege started this conversation. This is a privilege that you have to follow me and have this conversation. Now your privilege can't end it. You need to stay and have this conversation and finish it with me. And we finished it. And I felt like we walked away, we shook hands. There was a moment of hope to see you again, right? That was the martial art to me. It was like, and as I look at it, that's what my grandfather, who lived in the South and had to walk tall in the South, that's what he had to do all of his life, right? He was doing a martial art all his life, right? He had to know when to be calm and smile and when to step back. And now we're at a different level. So I want to continue that, right? I couldn't have done that 10 years ago.
There's something really powerful that happens when we see, and I don't even know if I want to call it conflict, but when we use that metaphor from the martial art of the attack, the attacker, the opponent, the competition, as somebody that we're there to serve. That's a topic that comes up for us a lot in the realm of competition, in the idea that we're relating to each other when we compete. We're not trying to annihilate, to dominate, to destroy. We're trying to compete with each other. And it sounds like, from what you're sharing, the martial arts has been a vehicle for that frame for you to really say, hey, when I feel that, when I see it, when I experience it, it's not an attack in the way that I may have used to look at it. It's an opportunity.
Right. In fact, my invitation to you and all of us out there is start with the language. If we use the word attack versus an interaction, if we say aggressive versus assertive, they create different, we organize around our nervous system differently around that language, right? We are language. Well, that's what motivates and creates action, all right? And so we start with the language, right? If I see them as someone who is in need of help versus someone who's an idiot, if I categorize it or label it, then I'm already fighting myself, right? I'm already creating conflict, right? So, and I can't say this happens all the time, right? My sensei says to me, RJ, you're practicing at 50, 60 watts right now. But when you get hit at 80 watts, like I go home and I visit my family, right? It's like it's 90 watts and I'm a little kid again, right? So I'm building a capacity to handle more and more. And yet, obviously it's not perfect. It's ongoing.
I love that. RJ, this has been incredible. before I ask my final question, where can these guys go if they want to connect with you online?
They can connect to me online at palette17.com, PALETTE.com, or skillful interaction. Soulfulview.com. Right. So any of those three: Skillful Interaction, Soulful View, and Palette 17. I'm all over the map somewhere.
Love it. I love it. So RJ, this show is called Omni Athlete. And one of the reasons why is we want to understand what it takes to be the ultimate mind, body, and spirit competitor. So the final question of the show is, what does being an Omni Athlete mean to you?
Wow. What does an Omni Athlete mean to me? It's interesting. When I first started receiving your flyers, I'll call them, your newsletter, it brought me back to my heyday. Here I am playing baseball, playing soccer, playing. So the Omni Athlete for me is the connection to childhood knowledge. And allowing myself to be just fully available in that moment and just letting all of that to just evolve. So to me, that's my Omni Athlete.
Wow. RJ, thank you for being on the show. Guys, please go check out the work that RJ is doing. Reach out if anything in this conversation sparked you the way it did me and the way that I'm sure it will for you guys. One of the most energizing pieces of RJ's work, and I keep using that word because it truly is an energetic component, is the way that we can leverage the body's intelligence, that we can connect to everything that is around us to show up more skillfully, to show up more authentically, to show up in more of a truth, and to be able to just be who we need to be in order to become the people we want to become, the leaders, the athletes, the performers, or the coaches. So go reach out. You will not be disappointed, and your world will grow as a result. And as always, thank you for watching this episode of Omni Athlete.
Hey, what is up, guys? Thank you for watching another episode of Omni Athlete. Please go like and subscribe to our podcast. That is our goal right now, is just to build this community as big as we possibly can, and we need your help to do it. So like and subscribe, share our content, guys. If this content adds any value to your world, that helps you perform, connect, go deeper, go wider, whatever it is that it does for you, if it provides value, all we ask is that you share our content and help grow this community. We can't accomplish our goal of elevating global consciousness through sport without you. You are an integral part of this mission and this purpose, and we need your help. So please go like, subscribe, and share our content, and continue to help us build and grow this community that is truly motivated to not just elevate consciousness, but elevate and shift the very culture of sport, so that we can truly experience the athletic experience in a brand new and energizing way for so many people, guys. So thank you, and please like and subscribe. Until next time.